What is up, guys? Happy Wednesday. This is your host, Adam Mason with the Bearded Dog Podcast. This episode is going to be really, really fun, really niche for, wedding vendors, for photographers or creatives who are looking to get published. Those principles we discussed during this. We did have a little bit of an audio issue, so the quality is not going to be your normal Bearded Dog, saucy audio that you're used to, but the content is wonderful and beautiful and magical, I promise. This is one of our live podcasts that we did in our Facebook group, togfb.com. Free to join. Come join a group of creatives that are really passionate about learning and bettering their lives and businesses. Really cool. Free to join. We do workshops in there all the time, and this is one of those. So people got to hear this first because they were in the Facebook group, which is really cool. So today we're talking with Kristen Green of Publishing Pretty. She's a wedding PR specialist. She has gotten featured in every outlet you could possibly imagine. She helps vendors get featured and does, PR for them, which is really cool. I learned about Kristen through a friend of mine when I've never submitted a wedding. I've never done that. I had no idea about any of that process, and really I was too late to the game. I'd already shot 100 weddings and never gotten them submitted, and somebody told me about Kristen and said, hey, she'll do it for you. And so that was really niche to outsource the idea of submissions. So Kristen's been on the team for 4 years and has helped me out tremendously. We've been featured in Wedding Chicks, Huffington Post, H&H Weddings. Like, she's really helped us out a lot, and it's been really cool and really special for our clients, who feel really pumped when they get featured. So Kristen breaks it all down, what editors want, what publications are looking for as a photographer, everything from image size to the rules to what you could do to exclusivity. And she just really dumbs it down, even for a guy like me. So I think it's really cool. So I want you guys to listen to this if you are looking to get featured or submit weddings. Without any further ado, here's Kristen Green. Awesome. So Kristen, super pumped to have you here. And now you're officially live. You're on the live, so which is really cool. So for people who don't really know, tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got into, the wedding PR game and what that even looks like.
Yeah, so I was actually in college majoring in PR and communications. And before I graduated, I had my first job secured. I had already worked there as an intern, and I loved the field. I loved the whole idea behind PR and helping businesses, but I didn't necessarily love the particular industry I was in. So we worked with a lot of staffing firms and a couple of nonprofits, and it was just, it wasn't exciting on a day-to-day basis. So I had a class project that encouraged us to build our own business and just kind of what that would look like, what kind of PR we'd want to do, what kind of clients we'd want to serve. And I had just always loved the wedding industry. I don't know if it was because my mom had been in the hospitality industry for years before that. She always was doing wedding cakes, and she worked with some hotels. I just decided, I was like, okay, this will be a fun little project to explore. And I talked to my mom about it. She was in insurance at the time, and she was just like, you know what, I'm ready for a change. Let's do this together. So we actually started out, our business was called Something New for I Do for years. She did all of the sales and the venue management aspect behind the business, because our first clients were wedding venues. That was our bread and butter. Our first venue we worked together on, I did all the PR marketing. She did all the venue management and the sales. We booked that wedding venue out solid. There were no dates for the next year and a half. So we were like, you know what? We're really good at this. Why don't we open our own venue? So that was the next part of it. And my mom then went on to own her own venue and then manage another. And today she still owns one of her own. And I now am on my own as Publishing Pretty. Obviously, she is still one of my clients, but it is just me now. And I really have honed in on my specialty, which is the styled shoot and wedding submission process, and just getting my clients the media attention that they deserve.
That's incredible. That's awesome. Is this all happening in Georgia?
Yeah, it is. So I actually, when I first started the business, I was in DC. we never
Wow.
met there. We didn't start working together when I was in DC, I don't think.
No.
And then from there, we moved a little bit closer home to South Carolina. And then from there, my husband got another job change that brought us home to Georgia. So I've been able to take this business with me all over the road. So I'm currently
That
outside of the Atlanta area.
that is super cool. I love that. I love that. What yeah, when did you move from DC? I want to know
Oh
that.
my goodness. So let's see. I graduated in 2013. So I moved in 2014 and we were there for maybe 2.5 years. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Awesome. So I literally remember sitting in a Tuesdays Together meeting in Rising Tide, like 2014, 2015. I just taught actually on SEO, which is hilarious. This is like, it feels so long ago. It feels like another
Yeah.
life. And I was talking to a friend of mine, who I think you know, but I don't know if she would want me to say her name. But I was talking to a friend of mine who was like a wedding planner in DC, and she was very, in my mind, very successful and having a good time. And I had been building my business, but I wanted more. And she was like, "Well, you got to get your wedding submitted." And I was like, "Oh, I don't even
Yeah.
know how to do any of that." And that just does not sound fun to me at all. And she says, "Oh, well, yeah, of course." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well then how does it actually work?" And she was like, "Oh, you just have to hire my girl Kristen." And I was like, "What?" And she was like, "Yeah, like, save up your money, like see if you can outsource, but like she helps me get everything submitted." And I remember talking to you and just being like, I had some questions. I was like, "Why does this sound so easy to just have somebody do this and to outsource?" And you basically told me, you're like, "Adam, almost every wedding we're going to be able to get featured somewhere." And the idea is just these relationships, and your experience was so high, which is really cool. And so that was, I don't know, 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, we've been working together, which is crazy. You're probably like my longest running
Oh, that's
contractor.
awesome.
uh, yeah, for better or for worse, I'm probably the worst
Oh
client because my
gosh.
work is hard
No,
to publish.
not at all. Not at all.
um, but that's really cool. What kind of dumb it down for myself and everybody else who is maybe just never submitted anything, and maybe they, because I know for me the process was, I had a few other wedding vendors that I had worked with who they would get it featured, and I was like, "Oh, cool, great!" Like I got to kind of ride their coattails for me.
Hmm.
Um, but what even is like submitting a wedding, and like, what does that even mean? What's that process look like for even just a regular photographer or a wedding vendor?
So, yeah, a lot of times the planner will want to submit it, which, in that case, it takes it off your plate. That's great. But if you're the one that's going to want to submit, which a lot of photographers want to, so they can kind of have a choice in where it goes so that they can make sure they're getting their ideal client's eyes on it. But basically, the process just looks like based on the style of the wedding, the season of the wedding, the style of your photography, you kind of take a look at all of those factors and maybe come up with a few publications that you would want to submit to. You would need to read through all of their submission guidelines to make sure that you have all the right information you need, that you picked the right photos, because a lot of it is laid out in there. They might not want photos of any food except for the cake. They might not want any reception dancing shots except for those dances between, the bride and groom and the parent dances and such. So it really is all about packaging your wedding in the perfect little submission package to increase your chances of getting it picked up. So that's basically it. You take it, you run with it, you wait patiently or impatiently to hear back from the publication before you submit elsewhere. You never want to submit the same wedding to multiple locations at once, just in case it gets picked up by both. And then you have to backtrack and, reject or take it away from another one. Just, you don't want to burn any bridges, especially when you're getting started, because it is very helpful to have those relationships. That's like one of the biggest benefits, I would say, in working with somebody like me, is those relationships that we've built over the years that allow us to, hear back quicker, get access to other opportunities. So you want to make sure that you're always trying to build that mutually beneficial relationship between you and your editor friends.
Wow. Yeah, I wouldn't even think of all of that. Like that's crazy. Even just like submitting to two different
Mm-hmm.
places. I'm just like, how does it even work? That's so cool. What do you think is like the idea for me? I love, and a lot of photographers, like, receptions are the longest part of the wedding. It
Mm-hmm.
might be 3, 4, 5 hours, right? Um,
why do you think that, most outlets, and things are changing, which we'll get to, but like, why do you think most outlets don't want any of a lot of that dancing stuff? Like, what is their kind of win from submitting your wedding?
I mean, it's really all about the details. I mean, that's the big thing right now. It's what did the couple do to make it unique to their story, to their background? What little touches did they tie in? It could be something like a custom bar menu with the cocktails named after their dogs and pictures of their dogs, or, just things that are different and unique to their story. They want to focus in on all those types of details. So less kind of noise from, a bunch of crowd shots or, a bunch of random shots of maybe like landscaping at the venue, although sometimes that kind of stuff is important and kind of setting the stage for some of those detail shots. But a lot of it is just tying back to the uniqueness and the design element of the wedding.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I was thinking about this the other day, and like I've only taken one photography class ever in my life in college, and it was about like shooting events and about like shooting photojournalism, and kind of the idea was like these 7 rules, and I actually forget the rules ironically, but these 7 rules of photographing an event, and it was basically just like a funnel of context, so like if you look at any submitted wedding, a successfully submitted wedding, outside of like the header image, which is probably like the cutest photo of the couple or the coolest detail, it starts the way most photographers blog, where it's like the outside of the venue, or like what kind of weather was it going, and it goes even deeper, like what was she wearing, what was the details, what was he wearing, what was going on, and then like you go deeper and deeper and deeper, whereas like when you think about it that way, you don't really need a ton of maybe dancing shots or even ceremony stuff, or like people, a lot of photographers, I know it's easy for us to be like, oh, but I have 10 shots of people crying. Like those are going to be the ones that help sell me. And they are to your clients, but to submissions, like they barely need one, of those. Like, okay, it's all right to have an impactful photo. Like, lots of outlets love
Definitely.
that. But like, the business is in like, in the nicest way is like this, not keeping up with the Joneses, but it's kind of like, hey, like if you want to, have an inspired wedding by yourself, or not by yourself, but like one that you feel inspired by, then these are some of the things you can look for as you're like creating your own, so I think that's really cool. One thing you mentioned though, this reminds me, so I used to tour and play in a band, and music was my life for a long time, and these things that you send to record labels, right? There's these things that used to be called record labels. That's where bands got signed. But there are these record labels, and we would have to submit like an EPK, which is called an electronic press kit, to multiple labels. And like the whole goal, and correct me if I'm wrong, like these outlets are getting tons of submissions all the time. And like our biggest goal is like, we want it to make it easy for them to say yes.
Exactly. Right? And that's why it's really important. That's my dog in the background. If you see her pop up, there she is.
Oh my gosh, she's so adorable.
She's a husky. She's super fluffy.
That's awesome. This is why you go live on Facebook, right? And not just listen to podcasts. Anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I said. It's all about the perfect little package. So everything, like you have to resize the photos according to their specs, because if they have to download your photos, resize them, upload them, like that's just an extra step that they don't want to have to do. And a lot of publications will straight up deny you because you didn't follow their submission guidelines. So it's really important to read that and make sure you're ticking all the boxes and making it super easy for them. You don't want them to feel like you just took the same photos and like blasted them out to a bunch of outlets. And that's why I tell people what part of my service is I take the whole set of photos. I'll go through and pick maybe 200 of my favorites. I'll download them to my computer. And then for each publication that I submit to, I repackage a submission gallery based on their guidelines. And then I submit it. Because I know, some people have different preferences about black and white images. Some people have different preferences about the number of horizontal versus vertical shots. Some people, there are outlets that are, vegan, that they don't want any like animal print, feathers, anything like that. You just have to be very careful, and you want that venue to know that you, or that publication to know that you are a true reader and fan of them, and that you did your due diligence, making sure that this wedding was a fit to actually submit there.
I didn't even think about that. That's brilliant. This is why there's so many details when it comes to it, like pun intended, where I just would, again, being a photographer, any kind of creative in the business, arena is like, you know your craft, which is like photography, and then maybe you slowly start trying to get better at business, right? And then like at the very bottom of my mind, I can't even fit it into the scope of things that I know would be, yeah, I need to know which outlets are vegan and which ones aren't so I can submit, like no feather boas, to this outlet. Like I couldn't even think about that. And like that's why, but it's so important, and it's like that's the, and I doubt part of it, if you didn't read it in their rules for submitting, they would never tell you after, right? Like they're too busy to like let you know why oftentimes. And so like having conversations like this and times where like we can hear from an expert on why it might be better, then this is going to be really, really helpful. I feel like that'll be really, really cool. What do you see? Do you work with a lot of do you work with just photographers or all kinds of wedding vendors now to help them get published?
So primarily it's photographers and wedding planners who are handling the submissions. If there is another vendor, maybe like a rental company that took on a big aspect of the design, sometimes I get one-off submissions from them, but primarily it's photographers and planners who had a big hand in the design or capturing of the day.
Sure. No, that makes sense. Yeah. I wonder, like, photos are really the only thing we have from, like, could you get a wedding submitted without photos?
Actually, I do have a videography client, and we just sometimes we have to get his videos published. Whether it be, I feel so bad for videographers. Like, and if you shoot video and photo, like you can probably feel the pain from this too. But a lot of times the video is left off of a submission. So, he's emailing me like, hey, can you please email this outlet to see if they will add my video because the photographer did it and they forgot about me. And they're the only person's work who it can't be seen. They might get a link to their business at the bottom of the post in the vendor credits, but their work isn't shown, so it's tough for videographers. And that, like, when people get published in print, and their name is mentioned, but you can't see the video if it's featured in a print magazine. Yeah. So I do work with him. He is my only videographer client at the moment. And it's challenging because we do have to be creative with the outlets that we submit to if we are only using the video. Some outlets will let us do like maybe 10 photos and the video. So it really just depends on the outlet, the situation, the style of it and everything, but it can be done.
Wow, that I can't even imagine. Like that, it makes so much sense. And I just imagine now you're going to get a bunch of videographers emailing you and be like, Kristen, help us. What do you see often, even prior to doing this for yourself and like probably having relationships with lots of outlets, like what do you see a lot of photographers specifically, what are they doing wrong when they go to submit something?
Man, one thing that...
You can include me. You can out me on this, like something I...
No, I can't think of anything that, you do a great job. And one thing, like going back to what we were saying about what you include in the submission and everything, I always get to see your selected favorites in our galleries before I'm going through and picking my own. And what you pick it's for your blog. It's so full of joy and life and laughter and those fun dancing moments. And, that's okay if that's what you pick for your blog and for your social media, go for it. Because if your wedding gets picked up and it features, the details, the venue shots, the couple at the altar and all of that, like that's pretty for inspiration for everybody else. But your blog should showcase your style. It should showcase, everything that you love about the couple when you tell their crazy story or whatever. So I love that. I love seeing your favorites because you always pick out the best dance shots. Like, to be honest, when I'm going through selecting photos for our galleries, I'll just like skip all of the dancing reception shots and I'll go to your favorites and then I'll pick those because I know they're going to be the best for that particular portion of it. So, but one thing that I can think of right away is not having a good selection of both horizontal and vertical shots of the same like detail maybe. So like the cake, it's good to shoot every detail that you can think of horizontally and vertically. I don't know if there's a term for that in photography lingo.
No, that's totally horizontal, vertical.
So, stuff like that, because that's hard when a lot of publications will usually mostly feature just vertical images. And I'm like, okay, well, there's no vertical image of this one detail. Like we're going to run with this one, but sometimes it can be a little bit hard. If you are going to edit your images to have a lot of black and whites, that's great. I know a lot of couples love that. And that's another thing too. Don't like start thinking when you're shooting of only shooting for publication. You still want to shoot for your couple, obviously, and get all those special moments that they want you to capture. But just while you're shooting, be thinking of how can I also make this work well for publication? So really focusing on getting as many shots of the details as you can, maybe a close-up of the cake, a little bit further away of the cake, a close-up of the bouquet, maybe the groom holding the bouquet, just as many options as you can think of for the details as you have time for. But when you're doing those black and white images, always make sure that you have a color version of that one too, because it limits us if like all of the most like sweet moments where, the couple's first kiss or like those intimate portrait shots where, you can tell it's a sweet moment and it's only black and white. And some publications don't feature any black and white images. That limits us to picking photos. Wow. So those are a couple tips I can think of off the top of my head.
That makes so much sense too, because I feel like some photographers, there are some that are like, I chose this photo to be black and white. It's the best, right? And a lot of that is like pride, but at the same time, it's artistry, which is probably the same thing. But like they are like, yeah, this is meant to be black and white. And then what I've mostly been doing for me the last like probably since I've been with you, working with you, has been, I'll do like one black and white and one color of the same. Like if I know I'm making a black and white, I'll try my best to make it a color version. And for a lot of photographers, sometimes, the image, black and white can save a lot of images.
And I'm a big believer in that too. I so agree. And if that's what you have to do, you have to do it. But if you can have an option, it's helpful.
No, you're totally right. It's it's one of those things where you're like, I like this moment, or mom's doing something cool or whatever. And then you make it, you make it black and white. But I'll try and like leave in a color one. And then I know past podcast guest Nesta Kessinger, she actually delivers a full wedding both in color and black and white.
That's interesting.
Yeah, which workflow wise, I'm like, I do not want to export twice and edit everything twice. Like, get out of here. But I imagine for like publications, it's like, or just for options, right? You're like, hey, we have every option you could ever want, which I think is really, really cool. It's so hard. It's so hard. And yeah, I didn't even think about the horizontal vertical thing, but I know for me, since we've been working together, I try, because also too, it helps with album design. Like you can tell what photographers are building albums and what photographers aren't by like how many images they're making vertical and horizontal, because I'm like, having a vertical would really, really help with this, like my wedding party spreads are almost always like one horizontal group and then 5 or 6 verticals. And that's just helpful. And then like usually too, I found that business wise, not even related to submissions or albums, but like, give a bridesmaid and a photo with her and a bride, they're going to use that photo on Instagram later, and they're going to tag me. And like, so it also pays dividends to me as a business owner to like take that single shot with just them.
That's a good point.
And, make sure they're looking good too, right? Because if they look good, then they'll want to share it. And so, no, that makes perfect sense. It's such a fun, I love all this. This is great. What, I want to know, what is, for you as a company doing all of this, like how does that compare to something like Two Bright Lights, or something like that, which I've only heard in the distance, mostly because like I don't have a Two Bright Lights. I have, Kristen, I have Published and Pretty, on the team. And so, but people say that you can submit to there and then they'll submit it for you, or they like put it through an algorithm. But what does that look like? And like, how does it differ to somebody personally running it?
So if that is your only option, if you're not doing anything right now, I would definitely get on and research those, because they are useful tools when you're limited on time, because a lot of them you don't have to continuously be downloading, adjusting the size, re-uploading to a new Dropbox folder every time you submit to someone. You have a standard resolution that you would upload your photos to, and then the editor, whoever picks it up from your submission, will then, do all of that legwork for you. So in some aspects, it's very easy. It takes the guesswork out of it, because they do have the algorithm algorithms that will tell you based on the style, the color, the season, all of that, where it could be a fit for. So it is they are very good tools for those types of situations. And I actually have accounts on both. So like I love them both. And if you do work with somebody like me, they will most likely have accounts on them. So that's another benefit of working with a publicist is you don't have to pay for them yourself. You can utilize them to use those platforms for you. But I believe Two Bright Lights, they're both under $200, I believe, for a year, or maybe around then or around that. But you're limited on publications, so sometimes you might want might want to submit to this publication, but they're not on Two Bright Lights or Matchology. Right. Some publications are only accepting submissions through those platforms. So like when we work with the Knot online or the Knot print, I have access to the editor that I can run a lot by them, but to officially get something picked up, I need to then go and upload everything through Two Bright Lights and do that. They only will accept things through Two Bright Lights. And there are some publications that do the same with Matchology too, which is another one by Isle Society. So, that's something that if some of the publications that you want to submit to are exclusively accepting submissions through those platforms, definitely get on board and use those platforms. But if you're finding that your dream publication list, if those places are accepting submissions outside of those platforms, that's a good, you don't need to have those platforms to submit to them. You can just as easily build those relationships and submit through their forums or submit through email and not have to worry about spending $200 a year to be able to get published.
Wow. That makes perfect sense. And also, would it hurt somebody, like in my case, would it hurt me to to sign up for those services and then, try to work with that? Or is it crucial, for me just to stick with, Published and Pretty?
Well, so I could, since I have a subscription, I could work on your behalf through there. All you would need would be a free account. So that when I would say, hey, I uploaded this album. Do I have your permission to submit? Because I'm not the content creator. I'm the PR rep for the publication or for the submission. It will ask you for permission, but all you would need is a basic account for that through Two Bright Lights. So that is an option there. If you have things that you would want to maybe try on your own, maybe divide the workload between you and I, if you have a lot more that, you want to work on beyond what we're doing together, then, it's definitely helpful. Any amount of attention you can get on your brand obviously is helpful. So, that's just up to you and your backload of weddings, how many you have that you would want to submit at a time, how much time you have outside of what we do together, because it does take time still to go through, cull those submission galleries, upload everything to Two Bright Lights, and, go through the process of filling out the information and all that. But once you do it, then it's pretty easy and turnkey. If it gets denied by a publication, you just hit resubmit and then choose who you're submitting to next and so forth.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. What is, the one question I have, so obviously I'm not trying to leave Published and Pretty. I like what's going on. Also, I remember 2 years ago or something, I had a VA help me send weddings to you, and it was just a huge backload. Like, we tried to get stuff submitted that was like 2 or 3 years old, and some stuff magically you were able to, make it happen. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then there came to a point where you're just like, and I don't even think you said this, my VA was like, Adam, do we really want to submit 3-year-old stuff? Like, does it feel like you anymore? And I was like, okay. And we had this whole spreadsheet of like where it was submitted, where it got featured, like all this stuff. Had we sent it to Kristen yet? And so the whole process, like, I wanted to make this process on my end like really seamless, so like now I set it up to where I've automated my CRM to send you an email 6 weeks after a wedding, which in my mind I think is like the coolest thing ever.
It is so easy.
Like,
yeah.
Okay, good. I was going to ask you if you were like, this is either great or awful.
No,
because
it's great.
It just takes everything from their wedding questionnaire, and then like I have their emails, phone numbers, all that stuff. And then if we need to get in touch with them for, additional information or something like that, like you're able to take that off my work plate, off my plate and, contact them. Hi, I'm Kristen. I work with Adam, whatever. And I think it's really, really cool. And I know for us, supposedly, I think we're going to have our first print publication
Mm-hmm.
later this year,
Yeah.
based on what we've
Very
heard. So
exciting.
that'll be really exciting. And it's a groom couple, which is like extra
Mm-hmm.
special. So, just because I know that that's going to be different for featuring all kinds of stuff. Anything else that we didn't talk about that you see that people should know that vendors don't know about? Like, what if Kristen had to say one thing to people in this this publication world and this wedding world, like what would you say to them, and like how can they help get featured better?
I would just say, if you are brand new to this, you haven't ever submitted anything before, just start following a bunch of publications on Instagram, while you're scrolling through at nighttime or whenever you are, just start following a bunch of publications, see what types of stuff they feature, get a feel for the aesthetic of the types of weddings they feature. You'll quickly find that certain publications typically feature a certain style of photography. So while it might be your dream to get published on Martha Stewart Weddings, for example, they feature a very specific look. So it might not be feasible for everyone's business. So try to follow the publications that kind of align with your style of photography. And you'll, over time, kind of get an idea of the types of stuff that you need to try to capture in your weddings to maybe have a better chance of getting featured with them. The more you're following them, you can start engaging with them, comment on the post, try to start building that relationship so that when you do finally reach out to that editor, maybe they'll recognize your business because you've been a loyal follower that's commenting on their pictures, that's, engaging with them via Instagram stories. Just, start being a student of it and start researching and following as much as you can. Definitely look into those submission guidelines and just do it. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I'm so intimidated, I don't know where to start, but you really just need to just dive in. And, if you get a bunch of no's, like that's okay. You're learning the process. You might not get that first wedding featured, and maybe you'll start to learn that there are some, things that you can do better in future weddings to shoot, to capture, both, again, what makes for a beautiful wedding for the client, and also, what makes for a beautiful gallery that you can upload to get published.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I didn't even think about the process for, somebody who's like submitting for the first time. But like, what is the last question, because we kind of talked about it, for people who are struggling with that first time, like what is the base? Should they look for submission guidelines? Is that like the initial thing, not just for photo size, but like what they would include, and then what they want to know as far as information from the couple? Like, is that kind of where the baseline would be of like, what do I even send them? Where do I put this?
Yeah, it is all laid out in there. And if it's helpful for you, I can send you to share with your members of your group kind of my template that I use that I will tweak. Sometimes it'll be a little bit different, but it basically will just have a section for the couple's information. They'll want to know their names, the date, their email address, maybe where they live, or the city that the wedding took place in. The photos, I'll usually send, just my selected favorites, but some of them also want to see the full gallery, the video, all of the vendors. You're going to need their website, the email, the social media handles. So it does feel like a lot of work on the front end, just getting all that information the first time. But then, like I said, the subsequent outlets that you reach out to, those, future pitches, you already have it all ready to go. So it'll lay everything out for you, the types of photos they include, the size of the images, just it'll be very specific, and you'll find that they'll be your best friend when it comes to submitting, is to read those submission guidelines thoroughly.
No, that makes perfect sense. It's that's one thing we actually just did. I made a copy of the email that I send you for submission, and I put it on our patreon.com/thebeardedtalk. So people who like just, okay, what do I need to gather to have? And so for us, it was like, again, it felt weird to ask for like an Instagram handle of a vendor in the wedding day questionnaire, but something I learned from a photographer named Jasmine Starr was like, you also want to check out what vendors you're working with. Like on my side of things, like I want to know, if I haven't worked with them before, are they legit? Do they make cool stuff? Maybe I'm interested in working with them more. And so it didn't seem that weird. So some couples they struggle, filling it out because they're like, why do you need this? And then at the same time too, there are vendors. Recently we had a wedding venue that we were scheduled to shoot at, and they made some really, really like I was shocked. Really bad comments about some of the current like political stuff going on, or not even political, but like the protest and police brutality and that kind of stuff. And so we canceled our weddings there. We refunded the couple and basically said, hey, we're never going to shoot here. And all that to say, it was, just this, again, like you have to, that's why we asked the couples for like, where are you getting married? Like, what's going on? We want to know too. Just because I've heard, now that I've been in the industry for a long time, I've heard like horror stories or, hey, this person's not really that good at this or whatever. And not that you're going to change anything that late in the wedding game, but it's just good to know who you're going to work with. And then if it's all people you like, you're excited to show up on wedding day, and hang out with your homies.
Well, it helps you prepare for what to shoot too. If you know there's going to be a vintage rental company there bringing in a bunch of props and decor, then you're like, okay, that, I know in my mind that I'm going to need to shoot all of these things. If there's going to be like a dessert table and not just a cake, that you're going to have to shoot more of these elements. So it's helpful for you to get that information on the front end.
Yeah, 100%. Now, before we go and to just take everybody's questions from the live, I want to, close off for the podcast and know, like, where's the best place for people to go and find information about you, to contact you, and, possibly even hire you? Like, where's the best place to go find out everything that you're about?
Yeah, you can go to publishedandpretty.com. You can learn more about my services there. But if you email me, I'll send you my PDF that has a lot more information on the process, the pricing, all of those details. But just, follow me at Published and Pretty on Instagram, and you can go to publishedandpretty.com.
Awesome. Cool. So, quick question for you though. Is that PDF that you send, have you made that a lead magnet yet? Is that like part of your like email sequence thing?
Email sequence. So
I'm not good at it, but to me, I'm like, oh, Kristen, this is what you should do. Like, just set it up as a, your lead magnet for free.
I know.
And then, like,
I have so much to do for my own business, but the truth of it is I'm so busy working on stuff for my clients that my stuff gets pushed to the back burner, which is okay because I get so much work through referrals. I'm truly blessed in that aspect. I don't have to do a lot to find new clients, but it's on my to-do list. Let's just say that.
No worries. I know exactly how it is. The email marketing part, like email marketing and Facebook ads are like and Pinterest are the hardest things for me to like go after. And so it's just very much like, okay, I'm not going to mess with it. Like I'm going to, everything, all the other pieces of the business are like firing so high and so well on purpose. And it's a lot easier to like stoke those fires and start something else from scratch. So no, I totally get that. That makes perfect sense. That's really cool. So if you're on live on the Facebook group, I want to know if you have questions for Kristen, concerns, ideas. Simon Williams, though, did ask if you work with photographers in the UK. I feel like that would be a challenge, but maybe how that could work.
I do. Yeah. So, it really just depends on your publication goals, like what the outlets are that you want to get published. I've worked with clients outside of the US quite a bit who focus on destination weddings. So I do work with a lot of destination wedding type publications. So just tell them to email me and we can go from there.
That's awesome. Simon, there you go. If anybody else has questions, I can ask Kristen and we'll wait just a few seconds for those to come in. If not, then Kristen and I will just stare at each other for a little while longer. And then actually she's like staring at herself.
I am. It's interesting.
We're trying to the whole live thing.
So
I
will say while we wait to see if anybody has any questions, I've had a couple clients or, photographer friends reach out to me and just say that they're concerned with, how they've had so many weddings cancel, or maybe the only weddings that they're going to have for the rest of the year are more elopement style. And I don't want that to discourage anybody from trying to submit those. I've actually heard a lot of editors that are excited for the shift because, like I said before, the goal of it is really to tell the couple's story and what details are intimate to them and, really just share who they are as a couple. And a lot of times these weddings turn into like huge productions that there are just, so many aspects are just for show, and like the true components of it, the true purpose of it kind of gets pushed to the back burner a little bit. not always. So that's just kind of how it can seem sometimes. So I've heard a lot of editors say, like, I'm excited to see with these more intimate gatherings, some scaled back stuff at how much more the couple's story and those personal elements can shine through. So don't feel like just because you are going to be shooting weddings of maybe 15 to 50 people the rest of the year, whatever it is that your state or couples feel comfortable doing, don't feel like those aren't going to be publication worthy because they're not as big or there aren't as many of those traditional details and traditional moments that you would normally check off on your shot list. It can still be publication worthy. And I still encourage you to try to get those submitted. Don't feel like editors won't be featuring them because they're not what you typically see. But if editors are going to be continuing to keep their content fresh, that's the kind of stuff they're going to be they're going to have to be posting because that's where the wedding industry is going the rest of the year.
Yeah, dude, that's brilliant. We were about to leave off the podcast, so you just came with this fire. Like, that is amazing. I'm going to throw that at the podcast. That's good information. I didn't even think, maybe that was just so nice talking to you. I didn't even think about COVID for like 45 minutes. But it's such a good thing to know about. And at least for us, we only shot, at least at the beginning of this, like March, April, May, or at least beginning in the States, like I only shot one Zoom wedding. And it actually supposedly at the time of recording this, late June, it's going to be featured in Vox, which is kind of cool. Which like they found us and reached out and like interviewed me for like 40 minutes. So I have no idea what that looks like. I think it's very similar though to like what the editor said of like we're excited to see weddings that are going to be different and what people are still continuing to do. And I did have one question to ask you before. There's two other questions from watchers real quick. What have you seen from editors and outlets with, the Black Lives Matter movement and, things like Pride or LGBTQ? I feel like a lot of outlets have kind of opened up a little bit, or not even just, in the last 3 or 4 weeks, but also in the last few years.
Absolutely.
What have you seen in that space?
There has been a huge shift before all of this to feature weddings of all kinds, whether that be same-sex weddings or, mixed couples or whatever that looks like, especially when it comes to styled shoots. Like if you have a white bride and a white groom and your styled shoot, might be beautiful, but just to try to encourage the idea of diversity and, or a same-sex styled shoot, like styled shoots are a whole nother thing in themselves, but that's something of the past, as much as you can and can encourage diversity in those situations do. But there is definitely a huge, huge push. Whereas in the past, there would be publications who they would describe themselves as like a diverse publication. And there still are. There are still publications that, feature mostly Black weddings or specifically gay weddings. We've had a couple weddings picked up on a blog called H&H that, is same-sex both ways, that only features those types of weddings. But a lot of publications want to see it all now, which I think is beautiful, because in the past it might not necessarily have been like that, but they understand and realize the importance of it. So there's a huge push. During all of this, there have been so many editors that have reached out to me. They're like, hey, if you have anybody that you can send us that is maybe a mixed couple, or it's a Black couple, or it's an Indian couple, or whatever. They just want to showcase love in any and all aspects, which I think has been amazing. It really is, to see the wedding industry in that particular way want to showcase all.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. It's one of those things where I can't speak for every outlet by any means, but giving them the benefit of the doubt the past, month or so has been a reminder or a wake up call. And they're like, oh yeah, we need to dial this volume up a little bit more, or a lot more, because it's something, because of privilege, it's like something that's so easy to slack on or not think about. I even saw like Harper's Bazaar. We're getting really nitty gritty now. We just got really nitty gritty. But Harper's Bazaar, I saw like hired a new editor in chief, or like replaced their editor in chief. So with a woman of color just to kind of like, reshift their focus as well. So, I was just kind of curious about that. So that's really, really cool. That's awesome. That's good news, I feel like, for all couples in general. And then I remember for me, getting that first email from an interracial couple, and they said, Adam, do you shoot interracial weddings? And I was like, of course, like I'll shoot almost any wedding, especially, like I, at the time in my brain, I was thinking like, why would anybody not shoot it? And then two, as a businessman, I was like, oh, well, of course I'm going to take it. And they told me, luckily I asked them for permission if they would be comfortable sharing, and there were vendors that don't, and there are vendors that turn down my LGBTQ clients, and I was like, oh, like how do I work with this? And so it's been a really interesting thing, and so I'm really glad that outlets are opening up, and at least in my eyes, for me, it's been a learning process, but I think like it's looking good.
Yeah,
it's looking good for the future. That's really cool. I want to ask, so in the Facebook group, we have two questions. Sarah Bill says, if we've never been published and don't know where to start with where to get published, can you recommend or choose the publications for us? I guess she's asking if you work with them, will you help suggest publications?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we start working together, I have a form that I'll send to you that I collect all the information in. And then once I have that, I just run with it and let you know where it's been picked up. So you can be as hands-on or hands-off as you want to be. We can brainstorm on the publications and kind of come up with a strategic plan of where we're going to submit to first. If that doesn't work out, we'll submit here next. We'll submit here next. So we can do that. We can say, I just want to be featured anywhere that's within my demographic, that has a good following online. We can really customize that for you. And if we work together for a long time, like Adam and I have, I just know the types of publications that he is looking to get featured on. And I just literally run with it. And I'm like, hey, this wedding's running here. This wedding is running here. And I just fill you in as we need to.
I am, for Sarah watching who has that question, for Kristen knows, I am so hands off, and luckily Kristen doesn't hate me so far. Kristen will be like, yeah, I think this place wants it. I'm like, cool, great, never heard of it. Or a lot of the times I have heard of it. Like you helped me get featured in Wedding Chicks, which is really, really cool, and H&H and Catalyst and a few other places. And I kind of, in my mind, I was like, oh, I just want to let you roll with it. I feel like what's best or whatever. We've had a few times where this is like a blessing for us, but you've been like, hey, like this other outlet wants this, but I know you submitted it to Washingtonian. This happened recently, which is like a local big venue for us. And we've been featured there before because of you. Thank you. But it's always helpful to be in the, the local eye. And you were kind of like, hey, so we can kind of go whichever route you want to. So that's the only time I feel like you, where I have to make any decisions or anything like that. Like if you want to be hands off with Kristen, in my mind personally, like you totally can. And she's an expert, and I feel like she'll get them where they need to go. And most of the time, it's just, I feel like the biggest emails I get from you are like couples who, are slacking on email. And you're like, Adam, help me ping this couple for some information. I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, they're probably like, who's this person? What's going on? And like, so we'll usually like make that happen. But yeah, and at the same time, yeah, I know you've been very open about like, Adam, if you ever want to dive deep, or if you have an idea for submission or whatever. But yeah, I'm just so out of it that maybe I don't know. But maybe later this year we'll like reassess, and we'll think of some outlets that we haven't been featured for. One thing that kind of goes to the last question from Nada, who was a great second shooter and photographer in Florida that we've worked together. But are the opportunities for submissions different for styled shoots? I think you mentioned something like those are a thing of the past. Is that just a thing of like the COVID past? Like how do styled shoots differ from weddings as far as getting submissions and stuff like that? Or does it have to be really, like kind of like we were talking before, does it have to be really attractive? Is there something a venue like if somebody was going to submit a Black couple or a wedding of color or something like that, then that probably has a higher submission right now because it's like the iron is hot. Mm-hmm. Like, what does that look like for you as far as styled shoots versus weddings for submissions?
So weddings are definitely preferred, I would say. Most print publications, if that's something that you're going for, only feature real weddings. That's it. They want to do justice to the couple's story. They want that personal element. So most print publications are only featuring real weddings. And most editors prefer real weddings, but that doesn't mean that there isn't still a place for styled shoots. You kind of just have to, get familiar with the outlets that accept more styled shoots. And, that goes back to start following them on Instagram, reading through submission guidelines, just familiarize yourself with kind of the ratio of what they're running. But I would say if you're planning a styled shoot, maybe you don't have a lot of work these next couple months and you want to just, get some of your vendor friends together and you want to, sharpen up your expertise or whatever, try to, if you can, find a real couple versus models. I think, if you can position it as more of a vow renewal or it's an anniversary shoot kind of thing, you have elements of their story that you can tie in. You have elements, design elements that can be personalized based on that couple, where they're from, their interests, and the description that you will need before you submit anywhere, where you just, basically type up information about the design of it, how it all came together, how you, came to this vision. You can incorporate information about a real couple. So yes, it's a styled shoot where you are controlling all the design of it, but you have a real couple and it's their story and they are really exchanging vows or renewing their vows or whatever. That's something that I think will help you. And it also is still being of service to a couple. It's still doing something for a real couple that they can use those photos. And it is a special moment for them to see each other in their wedding attire again or whatever. It's just, if you can do that, that's better. And I will say that if you are doing a styled shoot, really try to knock out all those details, make it really, really unique. If it's something you've been seeing on Pinterest all over or featured all over, it's not interesting enough to be reused. Try to think outside the box and really use the opportunity to challenge yourself design-wise to do some new things that you haven't done before.
Guys, wasn't that so awesome? Like, isn't that such a practical application and knowledge base for you guys now? I feel like I learned a lot. And again, I don't even know much about the process. And she is just an absolute master at it. So I had to have Kristen on. She's incredible. Reach out to her. You can hire her, use her, DM her. She's really, really, really accessible and always willing to help. She's just a great asset to any team. I feel like she's really incredible and had to have somebody on and talk about that. Because we haven't had an episode on that in a while, and I feel like it's really something that people can be focusing on right now with a little bit of downtime. So, guys, have a wonderful week. Do me a favor if you can. I would love for you to share this episode or your favorite episode on Instagram. Tag me in it at The Bearded Tog. I would love to see your favorite episodes, just to be curious. I'm curious what people love, what they love to listen to, what's influenced their lives. So seriously, take a screenshot of your podcast app, put it on Instagram, and just tag us at The Bearded Tog. Would love to see that. Thank you so much for doing that. Have a wonderful day, guys, and keep being awesome.